Hi, everyone. As you know, today I am doing a live. I'm waiting till my collaborators join. Oh, did it work? Hello. Hi.
Hi,
Yeah, thank you for being
thank you
down to
for
do
having me.
this.
Hmm.
I mean, if you're joining from their side, my name is Kehlani. I'm a singer-songwriter. Um, Not unfamiliar or new to what's going on, but um, the angriest I've ever been for sure. I always want to introduce this by saying, like, I'm not on the ground. I haven't been on the ground for ages, and my point in all this is to make sure that I'm using my platform correctly. Um, to make sure that I am highlighting and giving my platform to people who have been doing this work vigilantly, day by day. And so my intention with this is to listen. My intention with this is to ask questions, is to facilitate, is to ask questions that are popping up in the comments, because I've seen a lot of just the excuse of being uneducated or not knowing, or perhaps using the side of a religion that is represented, here with you, as a cause to be hateful or to be violent and to incite violence and to be a part of a problem. I'm a nervous speaker, but I speak from the heart. My heart is here. I'm not very academic. I'm not extremely academic. I would really like to just voice that here, because I know that might be a lot of people's feelings as well, as where do they fit in a space where there's a lot of language they might be new to, or a lot of concepts they might be new to, and overall they get overwhelmed and they want to withdraw or they want to ignore as a whole. But I'm here to let you guys know that I'm a nervous speaker. I don't speak very academically, but my heart is here. My heart has always been here. My heart has always been for the liberation of people who are oppressed. And that is my introduction. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for just creating this heart-centered space where we don't have to have the exact right words or the exact right way of saying it to know where we stand, to know that we oppose with every
Mm-hmm.
fiber of our being the genocide of anyone, right now the genocide of Palestinian people. My name is Morgan Basakis, and I'm a proud member of Jewish Voice for Peace. We are the world's largest organization of Jewish anti-Zionists, of Jews who are fully and unequivocally and wholeheartedly in solidarity with the Palestinian freedom struggle, with Palestinians deserving the right to freedom and safety and the right to return home. And we are using every single ounce of everything we have right now to demand a ceasefire, to stop this horrible nightmare, this genocide in Gaza. And I'm just really grateful for your being so vocal, and for really lifting up this critical essential demand for a ceasefire. And thank
Of
you just so
course.
much for having me.
Okay,
Yeah.
so like I said, guys, on this live, I'm going to be asking questions. You guys know where I stand. You guys know where they stand. We're on the same side here. This is a safe space for the both of us to speak, and hopefully that you learn something and take away from this. Okay, so my first question is, you are a member of Jewish Voice for Peace. Tell me more about this organization.
Yes. Well, we are an organization of Jews and friends who believe that everybody deserves freedom, like everybody, with no exceptions, including Palestinians. And we call ourselves anti-Zionist, which means we do not believe that Israeli apartheid and colonialism and occupation, the oppression of Palestinians, in any way brings us closer to Jewish safety. In fact, it just does quite the opposite. We believe as Jewish people that our safety and our liberation is bound up with everyone else's safety and liberation, and that our safety is bound up with Palestinians' freedom and safety. And so we are a national organization, the biggest in the world, of Jews who say no, no to Israeli apartheid, no to Israeli colonialism. Don't use our bodies, don't use our names to justify this nightmare.
So why is this moment specifically right now so urgent?
Yeah, I mean, I think the situation
Right.
the situation in Gaza has never been more dire. I think all of us are sitting by watching in
Mm-hmm.
absolute terror and horror. I know I am, as I watched the Israeli occupation forces bomb a hospital in Gaza today. I, I think that I can speak for so many of us when I say
Mm-hmm.
we are in horror and terror and panic watching this
Yeah.
unfold, this nightmare unfold in Gaza, which we are very clear is a genocide, is about the mass forced removal and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from their land. And
Mm-hmm.
we know this is not the beginning of that
Mm-hmm.
process. That process began many years ago, and we can talk about that history, how this is a 75-year-old struggle. This is not a struggle that started this week, but the situation in Gaza right now could not be more dire. And I'll
Right.
just be clear,
Right.
it's our government. It's our government, the United States government. I'm in DC right
Right.
now. I'm in DC right now. This is our government who is funding and cheering on this nightmare. This is not some faraway thing. Oh, this has nothing to, this has
Right.
everything to do with us as people here in the US. So the situation is dire, and really it's up to us to demand
Absolutely.
our government call for a ceasefire.
So why is the issue important for all people, not just Palestinians and Jews, but all of us, everyone watching, everyone in the world,
Yes.
everyone involved, every oppressed people? Like, why is it important for all of us to be on the same page right now?
Well, I would hope that if any of our
Right.
communities were facing a genocide, we would all stand up. Like I would just hope, as people who care of conscience in any way, that we would say no, that we would do
Yeah.
everything we can, no matter who it is. And this
Mm-hmm.
so for one, as people of conscience who are watching a hospital get bombed today, who are watching millions of people flee their homes, who are watching over 1 million children in Gaza trapped, like people of conscience. And then it's actually, we're complicit in it. It's not just some other issue that we care about. As Americans, we give $3.8 billion, over $3.8 billion
Mm-hmm.
a year to fund the Israeli military. The weapons that are we're sending weapons right now to the Israeli military to fund and support this genocide. So we are
Mm-hmm.
complicit, and that means we have agency, and we have to stand up and use our agency to stop this nightmare. And this is not just about, you know,
Mm-hmm.
this is not just about Palestinians, and it's not just about Palestinians and Jews, and it's not a religious situation. This is a colonial situation. And for decades and decades, the cause of Palestine is a progressive. It's if you call yourself a
Mm-hmm.
progressive, you care about Palestinian freedom. And so that's where we stand, and we believe that it's, as people here in the
Yeah.
US, we have to stop this. Like, we
So
have to stop
I'm
this
seeing in the
now.
comments, I'm gonna skip, guys. I have my questions written down again. I'm a nervous speaker. I make music. I am not a speaker in general. This is just my duty. And again, what I've been trying to reiterate on my social media for the most part is we all have a responsibility right now. It doesn't matter 5 followers, millions of followers, but especially those, if I have anybody watching me that have a large platform that in any way have influence, I believe this is your responsibility. This has felt like a responsibility for me. I hope this feels like a
Yeah.
responsibility for everyone, large platform or not, but especially I've been really, 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 really trying to speak to my peers. I've been seeing peers join the live. Peers, please, because anybody who follows you and looks up to you will hopefully follow what you can feed into them. And I hope that it's the right thing that you decide to do. And please, this is why we're speaking about this right now. People keep joining, so I'm going to keep reiterating it and bring it back to the focal point. So who are some movement leaders, past or
Yeah.
present, that you look to in times like these?
I mean, for me, as a Jewish anti-Zionist, I think about the long tradition of Jews who said no, we oppose the Israeli colonization of Palestine, and when we oppose all forms of white supremacy and
Yeah.
racism and oppression. That's what we do. And, I think particularly about my elder who passed on last year, Shotzi Weisberger, who we call the People's Booby. And she was in the streets all the way through her 92nd birthday saying no, and saying, as a proud anti-Zionist, lesbian Jewish feminist,
Yeah.
she stands with Palestinian rights, and that she would never want her identity or her grief or her,
Mm-hmm.
the idea of her safety to be used and weaponized against another community, that goes against everything that is a
Yeah.
horrible, that's horrible. And so she taught us really, I mean, she was in the streets during the George Floyd uprising, and she was in the streets all the way through the end. And she said really clearly with every fiber of her being, not in our name, not in our name. So I think of her in this time. And I also think of, the long
Mm-hmm.
tradition of Black liberation
Absolutely.
activists in solidarity
Mm-hmm.
with Palestine. I think about Angela Davis, and I think about
Mm-hmm.
how all our struggles are connected, and how what we're fighting for is collective liberation.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no exception. We can't
Absolutely.
make an exception for Palestinians.
So, what are your trusted sources for getting information? Because this goes into such a larger conversation about propaganda and about pages ran by, Israeli companies or Israeli platforms or Zionist platforms. And I know people are really honestly, it's strange. I'm really trying to like lead this conversation like in a not angry way, but it's interesting seeing people rally these two sides together and there's lies. So when looking on who to trust, I'm going to answer this question that's on here first. There are people that are on the ground. There are people that are on the ground that are going live every day from Palestine, from Gaza, from the streets of Gaza. There are reporters who have not let a single thing go unnoticed. There are people that they are suggesting, they are putting lists up. They are telling us who to follow. They are telling us who to watch. As far as who I watch to stay informed and stay in that way is those people on the ground, and the list that they're circulating. There's eyes on Palestine. There's Craving Palestine. There is, I can't butcher anyone's names that I cannot pronounce, but there's some really, really, really incredible journalists that are in Gaza right now that we haven't even been able to see for half of the days because of the lack of electricity to even charge their phones, or them having to literally use their hands to not be on their phones, but to literally help people with their hands. But that's who I follow. And I try to really stay with organizers who have been doing this work long before this, who have credibility. Again, the last like 20, 30 people I've followed on Instagram, if you are looking for actual accounts to follow, those are all people that I trust, and you can answer as well.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you
Yeah.
saying first and foremost to listen to Palestinians, and listen to Palestinians living in Palestine and in Gaza who are documenting the conditions of genocide. And I think in the media over here, in the Western media, there is so much profound Islamophobia and
Yeah.
anti-Palestinianism and racism that is dehumanizing Palestinians. And that really is creating, as Mohammed Al-Kurd, who's a great person to follow, has talked about, the conditions for this genocide by really dehumanizing Palestinians and only, really not listening to Palestinians. So first and foremost, just echoing your commitment to listening to Palestinians. And for me, the Institute for Middle East Understanding, IMEU, is a great place to get a lot of clear, up-to-date information that's really good and easily to share and easily shareable. So I really
Okay,
turn to them pretty
amazing.
frequently.
Okay, so my next question, which I keep getting asked, and it comes from a space of people being like, I don't know what I'm contributing. I don't feel like I can contribute. What can I do to help? And again, my answer to the question is the asks that we've been given are from people that know that we cannot get up and use our hands. They know we can't fly there. They know that we cannot get up and patch wounds or hand over food or things like that. They know that. They have asked us the simplest of things. They have asked us to use our voices. They have asked us to spread the words. They have asked us to join protests. They've asked us to call our representatives. These are all things that you can literally do. Majority of those things, except for showing up to protest and using your bodies, is on your device, is on your phone. And again, one of the most frustrating things that we've all experienced and had to be so weary and upset about is the fact that there's so much privilege in the fact that we can be like, I don't want to deal with this right now, or this is too much, or this is a lot. I'm going to put my phone down. There is so much privilege in that, you guys. People have to see what's going on without being able to turn away, because it's a privilege, again, to turn away. People have to see what's going on, you have to see this in your face, and you have to participate in some kind of way. And it's not an imbalance of there's enough people speaking, there's more than enough people, I don't have to join my voice. It takes everyone. It takes every single one of us. Every single one of us. So, before I talk in a circle and repeat myself, I at least know that I can answer that part of what can we do. If you feel like there's, more ways, please let us know all the ways in which all of us can get involved.
What just echoing every single word you just said, really deeply echoing every single word you just said. And so much of what we've been talking about is like action is the only antidote to despair. Like that's the only antidote. Like amazing beloved Jewish leftist writer Grace Paley wrote that action is the only recognizable feature of hope. The only recognizable feature of hope is action. That it's about action. Like action is where we find each other. Action is where we transform our grief and our fear and our terror and our rage into a struggle for life and for justice. And so right now I'm in DC, and we have called for a national mobilization of thousands and thousands of Jews and anybody to come to DC tomorrow at noon in front of the Capitol to demand an immediate ceasefire. Our representatives, Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib, have put forward a resolution demanding a ceasefire, and it is our job, as the rest of Congress is trying to authorize more weapons to send Israel, to create more mass death, to put our bodies here and say no. And as Jews, we know that this is being carried out in our name. This is being carried out in the name of Jewish safety, and we say no. We are not united behind Israeli apartheid and colonialism. No, we are united behind justice. We are united behind everyone's dignity. We are united behind everyone's safety. And so one really important thing is for anybody who can to drop what you're doing and come to DC tomorrow. And I know that not everybody can do that, and that's totally okay. And if you can do that, and if you've been considering it, I really ask you to come. We really need everybody possible to be here and show Congress our numbers and our power and our commitment. And then, like you said, the rest of us need to keep calling our representatives as much as possible every single day, all day long.
Okay, good. Okay. No, you're good.
Shoot. I'm back. I'm sorry about that. We need to be as loud as possible as we can, demanding a ceasefire. And that's our work. That's our singular work right now. We don't need to all agree about everything. We don't need to all feel the same thing. We need to all be as loud as possible to demand a ceasefire, to demand an end to the siege on Gaza.
So that leads me into, can you explain what a ceasefire is? I know that might sound really simple, but there might be really young people watching me who don't even understand what a ceasefire is, how we play into that, how the government controls that order. Like, what is a ceasefire?
Okay, I think first of all, it's there are people who are better equipped to answer this question than me, so I'm gonna be with you. I'm just gonna be transparent and being like, I think there's probably like a very specific definition that I don't want to get wrong. So I'm gonna invite people to turn to. Okay, because I'm gonna use the safe space and say the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights and Jewish Voice for Peace and Adala Justice Project are the organizations I would turn to who are putting forward this legislation to call for a ceasefire. First and foremost, it's stop sending more weapons to Israel. First and foremost, we know from the past bombings of Gaza that they only stop when there's enough international outcry. We have to create as much international outcry as possible to say the United States says stop.
Perfect. Okay, so this goes back to you speaking about how it's important that people know that this isn't a religious thing. What is the definition of Zionism?
Yes, I really appreciate you asking that, because I think for a lot of us, we get the idea of Zionism and Judaism get conflated, and they're not the same thing. They're not the same thing. Judaism is a thousands of year old diverse global tradition and culture that is, that is thousands of years old. Zionism was only introduced, the idea of Jewish nationalism was only introduced in the late 1800s. And Zionism is the ideology that says there needs to be a Jewish state. And Zionism has been used as the justification and the pretext to dispossess Palestinians from their land, to colonize Palestine, to create an apartheid regime. So Zionism is a political ideology. Judaism is a religion and a culture and a long, long tradition. And since the beginning, what's really important for me is that since the beginning of Zionism, there were always Jews who said no. There were always Jews who said no. Of course, Palestinians from the very beginning said no
Right.
because they knew that this would lead to their dispossession. But there were also always Jews. There were also always Jews. And it's really important for me as a Jewish person, as an anti-Zionist, to ground in my movement ancestors and ground in my political ancestors who have always said nationalism, Jewish nationalism that comes at the expense of another community's safety will never keep us safe. We don't want to have anything to do with that.
I think that non-distinction alone is what's causing such a divide. I want to be really clear about understanding propaganda and the way that it's working on a lot of us, the way that it has always been fed to us and given to us across every single tragedy that's occurred in relation to government, in relation to war and genocide, and oppression. And I want to be really clear that understanding that alone, people who are watching, understanding the distinction between Zionism and Judaism can help you really take the right stance on this topic, especially because I think that that's a driving force in why people are not speaking out. So
that's exactly right. And that's exactly right. And
absolutely.
Palestinians know very
Absolutely.
clearly the difference between Judaism and Zionism. And, I don't know about you, but I'm also getting messages from around the world, from Arab people and Muslim people and Palestinians who say, we know this is not about Jews versus Muslims. We know that. We know this is not we know Zionism is very different from Judaism. And we know that Zionism uses Judaism and uses our symbols, uses our traditions, uses our practices, and says it speaks on behalf of Judaism, but it doesn't get to. And that's why it's really important for us as Jews to speak loud and proud,
Right.
to say, no, you don't speak for me. You don't speak for me. And there's always been a tradition of dissent. So yeah, it's like you said, it's so important to distinguish. Zionism is not the same thing as Judaism, and anti-Zionism has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Anti-Zionism is about the freedom and dignity of Palestinian people. So it's
okay.
yeah.
So my next question is occupation. I want you to really explain why it's important that we use terms like occupation and apartheid, and then we'll go into the history of it. But instead of using the words war, instead of using the words conflict, why is it important that we use the words occupation and apartheid? And what are the definitions of those things for people who are watching that may not understand all the way down to the core what is going on?
I really appreciate that question. And like this, first and foremost, we listen to Palestinians who are using terms to define their own oppression. Like we're listening to Palestinians who are using the terms occupation and apartheid and genocide to define their own oppression. And then beyond that, we're listening to international human rights organizations like Amnesty and Human Rights Watch, who also say very clearly this is apartheid, occupation, and genocide. And, the occupation and apartheid, this is a 75-year, Israeli occupation and apartheid is a 75-year-old regime that started in 1948. And what's really important for us to know, and that for many of us, we don't get taught this history, and that's painful. And we should be mad about that. We should be mad at our educational institutions, and we should be mad, for me as a Jewish person, at our Jewish educational institutions for not teaching us the history. We need to know that in 1948, over 750,000 Palestinians were displaced from their land in what's called the Nakba, the Arabic word for catastrophe.
Right.
Well, we don't learn about that, and we don't learn that since the Nakba, there's been a system of apartheid and occupation in which increasing seizure of Palestinian land, creation of laws that privilege Jewish people over Palestinians, constant military and police checkpoints and restrictions of movement, settler violence. We see that this is not just a problem about the Israeli military, but it's also about settlers, who are also doing the work of this, helping to carry out this system. So apartheid and occupation are the terms that we use to say that this is not about a conflict between two sides that are somehow equal. This is about a giant military power that's backed
Right.
by the biggest military power in the world, the US, and that is maintaining control over
Mm-hmm.
land and movement and freedom. Um, so that's why we use those terms, and it's really important for us to,
Yeah.
to believe Palestinians, and also to believe that
Mm-hmm.
many international human
I
rights
also
organizations that
want
use these
to
same terms.
include something that I learned last night in a meeting that I was very lucky to be able to be invited to in a room full of really, really educated and active people. Um, and it shook me, is that young children in Palestine, in Gaza specifically, get charged standard sentences, like adult sentences, for throwing rocks and sticks at soldiers who are coming into their homes with guns. Like standard minimum, like minimum what, maybe 20 years for fighting back with rocks and sticks. This is a prime example of like, it's not a war because there's not equal sides. Again, that is the point that everybody's trying to make. I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking to the the people watching, but a war is when two sides are equally equipped to fight each other. That is not a war. This is genocide. This is completely unequal. It's been unequal since the beginning. This is why we use occupation and apartheid. So that is my add-on to your answer.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I feel like there's so much more that people need to know. The last question was, is there anything else I feel like people should know? But I really want to speak to why it's important to not, why understanding that neutrality is also taking the side of the oppressor. Because I think that there's been, if I say something and I make it equal and I go, okay, I'm praying for, everybody involved, why is the understanding that neutrality is still on the side of the oppressor? Like what does that mean? What does that mean and why is it correct?
I so appreciate that question. And I think, if we were to ask South Africans struggling against the apartheid regime and people in that moment who tried to claim they could be neutral, and there were people who said, no, we're not going to support the boycott of South Africa. And, and look how they look in history. And I think for us, it's really a question of like, what kind of person do you want to be now? And what do you want to say to future generations when they say, what did you
Mm-hmm.
do when there was
Mm-hmm.
some power in your hands? And I don't want to
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
I let my fear run me. I don't want to say that I
Mm-hmm.
let my fear of saying it wrong run me. I I want to say I did everything I could, everything in my power, and we as a community and we as a generation did everything we could in our
Mm-hmm.
power to stop an unfolding genocide. And
Yeah.
I think there's no neutrality. I mean, there's no neutrality, and 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 not only that, but again, like the uh, like you talked about
Mm-hmm.
the privilege of imagining there could be any kind of neutral position when it's our tax
Yeah.
dollars that are going to fund this nightmare. So we are implicated, which means we have agency. It's our
Yeah.
responsibility, and Palestinians are asking us and
Yeah. And
being very
there's
clear about
there's a
what we can
couple
do.
things that I want to state while I'm on live, and there's so many people watching. There are people that are afraid to speak up because the way, the influx of money, how money will change, how opportunity will change. If all of us spoke up, if every single one of us spoke up and held each other, I don't see how that could happen. And I say this to say, like, there's different privileges in the way I'm able to say that versus someone else, and I still think it's bullshit that anybody could be silent. But if all of us spoke up and held each other, there's really no way that all of us could get canceled. And the cancel thing is again such a privilege, because in what world does getting canceled matter more than being literally killed, having your children murdered, having your entire family murdered? It doesn't equate. And that is the part that's made me the most angry about being in the position that I'm in, and in the world that I'm in. And I find myself struggling to like not be so angry outside, just looking at people. I'm like, how are you enjoying your day right now? How are you doing something regular? Like, where I'm at a restaurant and like, how are we even eating right now? I I just encourage you to think that always remember the people at the most vulnerable. Just remember the people that are the most vulnerable, and it there's no possible way that it weighs out. And you just be a decent person. I feel like it is so extremely easy in this moment to be a decent person. There's a video going around of me right now at this protest, and I'm so not well spoken. I'm just like, it's black and white, it's black and white. And I get all the factors of that play into history. And even when you look at that, it's black and white. It's so black and white. This is very easy to understand. These are people being murdered at such a high rate that we can't even fathom it. Because we, especially if I'm talking to our generation, like we haven't even seen anything like this. We've never seen anything remotely like this at all. It's very easy to understand where you want to place yourself in the world right now. And again, this goes back to you saying,
That's
when we look
right.
at this one day, when my daughter grows up, and me and my daughter have to speak about this one day. She's 4 years old. What am I going to tell my daughter I did? Because she's going to be able to comprehend one day, understanding if I was on the right side of it or the wrong side of it. And she's going to look at me and go, "Mommy, what did you do?" You know? So I just really want to like put my, not my anger, but my passion into the right space. Um, I could be rambling and repeating myself a lot, but I've been very unable to like verbalize correctly. Like all of us, I feel like, who are experiencing the amount of rage. You're valid. Anybody watching this right now, the amount of rage that you feel is so valid. The amount of hurt that you feel, the amount of like pain that you feel for this is valid, and use it correctly. So
That's right.
no,
That's right. And
I,
I
I
think
was gonna
that's
ramble.
right.
Go
Now keep
ahead.
going. Yeah. Well, I just think that's one of the tools that oppression
Yeah.
uses, is to say you don't understand
Hmm.
enough, or you don't get it, or it's too complicated for you. It's how many of us have that little voice inside that says it's too complicated for me. I don't
Right.
understand it. It's like, well, when a
Right.
hospital is being bombed, what's complicated, right? What's complicated here? And we
Right.
know, because we know about American history. We see these very same things play out. And it's okay that some of us aren't taught the truth, but we have to be humble and be open to unlearning and learning things we didn't know, and listening to people who then themselves and their families have survived.
Mhm.
And I think it's so important, like you said, to listen to Palestinians who've been struggling against these systems for 75 years. And for me, like, we could be just at my phone. That's so we could be overcome by fear and terror and isolation, but in action, we taste the world to come. We taste what we want. We get to taste the love of community. We get to taste, like,
Right.
oh, we're not alone in this. Oh, we're fighting for each other. Oh, my safety, you care about, like, our safety is bound together. So I really encourage
Hmm.
people to get on these daily calls that Jewish Voice for Peace and the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights have been holding every
Hmm.
single day, to take action together and just feel each other, and to turn out like you've been doing to these protests, and be there as much as possible. And again, like, the antidote to the hope,
Yeah.
the antidote to the despair is our hope. And like Mariam Kaba says, hope is a discipline. It's not something we
Okay, I'm
wait
gonna
for,
make
it's a
two more
discipline.
points, and then we can check if there's any, questions in the comments. I see so many things going so fast. Okay, my first point is, this is so dire right now, you guys, because by the hour, by the minute, really, but by the hour, we are receiving more horrible and more horrible and more horrible information, more attacks, larger attacks, running out of food, running out of water, running out of medicine, walls being shut off, people who are trying to give aid being completely unallowed, the United Nations aid building bombed. Like, this isn't like a let me gather myself for a couple days and like figure out where my head is at and then I will speak. This is a speak now. This is a learn now. This is a sign up for the all the petitions now, find a protest now, follow, speak now, you guys. I cannot stress how there isn't any time to say I'm going to learn this at another time or take my time to learn it. I wanted to make that very clear too. Another thought that has allowed me to really, I didn't have to be convinced deeply of anything, but has allowed me to, when stating it to other people, they've been able to sit with it. Imagine when you lose one family member. When you lose one family member, how that can change the trajectory of your entire life. That trauma can change it. Like, you're able to think back when you're in your 30s to be like, yo, when my dad passed, when I was in my teenage years or my early childhood, that changed the trajectory of my entire life. These are people losing everyone they know, their entire family in one moment, their entire family, all of the friends they've ever had, their children, every single last one of them. Imagine not only what they're going to have to fight through now, but the trauma that they're going to have to live through if they live on the trajectory and the path that we're on now. If we do not speak up, and I'm only speaking this gravely and this intentionally because it is this serious, it is this serious that we make any type of implication, that we care, and any type of like motion towards it as possible, because there may not be anything left there. And I hate to speak any type of like unhopeless in that way, because I have so much hope. I have so much hope that if we can put all of our energy together in the right way, but we have to hear it this bluntly and this blatantly and be able to put ourselves in this position and in those shoes so that we can push forward in the right way. You guys, you have to think and be able to put yourself in these people's shoes. And it's actually so unfathomable. It's so unfathomable. But you have to be able to put yourself in that place, because that's the only thing that will allow you to stop being neutral, to stop being on the wrong side, to stop watching as genocide is literally occurring in front of our literal eyes, our children's eyes. I don't want to cry, so I'm not gonna, keep being that aggressive with my speech because I'm getting a little emotional, but we can't let it happen. We won't let it happen. As far as I'm concerned, everyone around me is on the page of not letting it happen. And I thank everyone on this live who has joined us in solidarity with that in their hearts. I want to let you close out with anything that you have to say, because I think I've like word vomited. But if you know me, you know that's just who I am.
No.
That's just how I get down.
And I just want to give you so much appreciation for what you just did and what you're doing, and for feeling your grief and your rage in public, and for feeling your commitment to justice in public, and for being courageous in public. And that's what we need. And you are showing us the way. So I just really want to say thank you so much. And that we all need to take a page from your bravery. And we all need to take a page from saying, yeah, let my heart show me, not the right saying it in the way, but my heart knows what's true here. My heart knows this is wrong, and I have to do everything in my power to stop this. There is nothing complicated about a genocide, and nothing complicated about a genocide that's being carried out in our names and with our tax dollars. And it is our responsibility to do everything we can to stop this now. So I just really appreciate everything you're doing and everyone who's taking action.
I'm a mom. I'm a mom. So bless you.
Bless you. Really bless you.
If there's any questions that we are able to answer in the comments, they're going by really quickly. We can answer a couple. We've only been on here for like 40 minutes, so I say we get, I don't know how long these last before they kick us off, but we're here to answer any questions. Again, I'm here listening. I want to reiterate for people that haven't been here, from a young age. Am I back? The best thing that I learned from a young age of growing up in Oakland and growing up understanding liberalism and being behind movements is that the best thing I could ever do was to listen and pay attention to people who have been doing it for time before me. So that's what I'm circling back to.
Yes.
How can we join your efforts from out of state? Out of state here? Yeah. Oh, like out of DC? Yeah. Do you want to answer?
Yeah. Yes. You can call your elected officials, and there's super easy people have made it super easy to call in like a minute, and it patches you right through and gives you a script. I know that Jewish Voice for Peace has a caller that you can just plug in your information. It connects you right to your representatives, and also the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights has one. But it's really important wherever you are to get on the phone all day long, basically, because we know that there's the drumbeat of war is happening. The drumbeat of Islamophobia is happening. So our electeds are hearing from sides that are demanding, that are calling for war and calling for genocide. So they need to hear from us and hear from people of all kinds that say no. And if we're Jewish, we need to be loud and clear and proud and saying, as Jewish people, we say no. So if you're not in DC, you can call your electeds, and there's, again, JVP or the U.S. campaign has callers to make it super easy. And you can turn out to Palestinian-led demonstrations that are happening across the country to both mourn the dead and fight like hell for the living. And that's our call. That's our call as Jews and Palestinians and everybody, is to mourn the dead by fighting like hell for the living and preventing more suffering from happening. So look up in your area and see where there's a demonstration or a mobilization happening, and go to it. Call your elected officials. If it's any way you can get to DC tomorrow, I do again ask you to come if you can tomorrow at noon.
Perfect.
Yeah, those are some thoughts.
Guys, it's tomorrow. Tomorrow where again?
This tomorrow, yeah.
Okay.
Tomorrow outside the Capitol at noon, and there's been actions all week of thousands of Jews descending on DC saying not in our name, and and it's just getting going. There's been more national mobilizations that have been called. Palestinians have called for a general strike. So these are all coming out as we very fast. So follow what Palestinian organizations are asking.
A good question. I see people saying that because of in other instances in the world when there's been donation links, and there's always like this fear of like scam, or like, how will my donations actually make it? How do we discern between where to donate, where not to donate? I am going to repost on my story a link that was sent to me, and they have this beautiful breakdown slide on their Instagram in which they explain like how they get things over there, how they get supplies over there, where the money goes, how exactly the money goes. I have to find it again, forgive me, but I do have access to it, so I'm going to find it and post it. But if you have an answer as well.
I know that Medical Aid for Palestinians is an organization that really so many organizations are trying to direct people to support financially, which is providing urgent medical care. As we know, Gaza is under siege, which means they're not there. There's no humanitarian supplies. There's no humanitarian relief coming in. We know that doctors in Gaza have said, we're not going to leave our patients. So I know Medical Aid for Palestinians is one among many organizations, but I look forward to seeing the breakdown that you have.
Oh no. Get out my live. See some wrong flags. We're gonna take a couple more questions. I see some good suggestions of some aids, some good sources in here maybe. I also don't understand how that works with the siege. How is medical care getting in there if it's blocked? I wish I had an answer to this.
Yeah. And we need to turn to organizations like the Middle East Children's Alliance and IMEU, the Institute for Middle East Understanding, who are tracking those exact things. And we need to call our representatives and say, lift the siege on Gaza so that humanitarian supplies can get into Gaza. So, again, the biggest barrier to people getting help is the siege. And so we have to demand a ceasefire now.
This question, why is it important that not only Muslims speak? I will say this, as I'm not Muslim or Jewish. The Islamophobia that already exists in the world, that has existed for far longer than ever needed to ever exist at all, already puts Muslims in a category of being attacked, because that's what Islamophobia is, right? It's hatred for Muslims. It's already living in that terror of, why should we listen to you? We already hate you. That's why we have to speak. We have to speak because we're already in a position to be believed more, to be listened to more, to be protected more when we do speak, to be cared for more, right? This is the same issue, and why when things come up in any other liberation movement, other people have to speak up. It's like, it's the simplest math of the people at the most vulnerable are at the most vulnerable. So they're already in a position to not be listened to. So we all have to join forces and speak for them. I don't feel like there's like another addition to that answer, but I think that's why it's important that we speak. So, okay,
Very much so. And that
right,
Islamophobia is coming from the highest offices of our government. And that's not the beginning.
exactly.
We saw this after 9/11. We see ongoingly the use of Islamophobia, anti-Arab racism, anti-Palestinianism coming through the media, coming through our government. And we need to be loud and clear and unapologetic in saying no, no Islamophobia, stop criminalizing and dehumanizing Muslims and Palestinians and Arabs. And like that's our
This
responsibility. And
question
we hope people would stand
says,
up.
although a
Yeah.
ceasefire is absolutely necessary, what can we do beyond that in order to begin the decolonization of Palestine and the restoration of land to the people who have been displaced for generations?
I mean, I think Palestinians have been talking and writing about that very question for 75 years. So I think we can turn towards them. And I know that one important strategy that Palestinian civil society put
Mm-hmm.
forward was the boycott divestment movement.
Mm-hmm.
The boycott divestment and sanctions movement was an additional thing that we can be doing, who are those of us who are in the international community who are not in Palestine, to boycott companies that are profiting from Israeli apartheid and colonialism, and to divest our institutions and to stop funding military funding. So I think in addition to this immediate call for ceasefire, there's also the ongoing call for BDS. And then I think it's also we
Yeah,
just keep listening to Palestinian organizations
yeah,
who are thinking of really creative solutions
yeah.
to return home.
Which is quite a lot of companies. If you guys can check out that list and do your research, but quite a lot of companies, quite a lot of the large ones that trickle into the smaller ones, quite a lot of networks, quite a lot of labels, quite a lot of designers, design houses. So if you can do your research on that, that is definitely a larger step. Can you talk a bit about how to spot propaganda designed to prevent us from being on the right side of this? And there's so many levels to, from language to imagery to timing. Like this is one that I feel like is really important. Um, I have maybe a couple I can add to this as it does get very, tricky to spot, but language like killed versus dead, you know, not referring to people as humans. Um, yeah, I, this part makes me too angry to pinpoint more, but those I pay attention to very specifically. Language, like how they speak about dead children, how they speak about killed children, how we are speaking about innocent lives like it's just like collateral collateral damage. That was actually used. That was used by someone on the news, was it not? So if you have additions to that.
I mean, I think we again like following Mohammed Al Kurd has been a really important for me, and I think for so many of us to see through the media propaganda and media disinformation and misinformation that is really accelerating this call for war and genocide of Palestinians. So I think tuning into Mohammed Al Kurd's work, and again IMU's work, but really he's showing us about how the media narratives that we're getting are
Yeah,
creating the conditions for
yeah.
genocide itself. So
And I
just
see
echoing
people in the
what you
comments saying
said.
that
Mm-hmm.
it is language and dehumanization. Absolutely. So yeah, killed versus dead, defense versus terrorism, law of the jungle, conflict versus genocide. And again, this goes back to when we're speaking about remaining neutral, or we're speaking about the way in which we speak about it. It is so important to say genocide. It is so important to say murder. It is so important to say the things that we're saying in the most extreme ways, because it's the only way to flip the table. It's the only way to flip the conversation. So I think, is there, don't see any more. Is there more questions? Yeah, bodies versus lives. I'm just gonna say this was never gonna be a neutral conversation, so it's just, I don't know what comments were here for that, but this was clearly for the right side of things. Blah 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 blah. I'm looking for questions, but I don't think there are many. Oh, I see this, and this is important for me to add. How can I organize a
Hmm.
protest in my city? Okay, I've been taught there is so much there's process to that, and there's a program to that, and I would not suggest just starting a protest yourself. I would never suggest just like being like, hey, we're gonna pick a spot and like this is what we're gonna do, because that's if this is not what we do on our everyday, if this is not what we do, I'm not saying for a living, because that's it's not for a living, but there are already organizations. I guarantee you, if you live in a city in America, and there's probably an organization that exists that are ran by people who have been doing this for ages, since the time they found out about this. There are organizers, there are, point is, don't start one yourself. I don't think it's safe. I don't think we have like the what is the word, we don't have like the framework, we don't have the infrastructure ourselves just to like know how to do that, because it's more things that go into that than we think. Tap in with your local organizers, tap in with people who already verified, leave it to people who have already been doing this work. And I think that that's also important, because there's a difference between adding to a cause and taking up space and centering ourselves. And I think that this is something that I always have to even check my process continuously. And that's my point of like coming on this live and listening more than, trying to spearhead it or like do all those things, is we have to listen, because we have to decenter. It's the only way to actually go about this fight the right way, because people already know what they're talking about. So take a step back, accept that you're fearful and you're angry and you're passionate, and that is so powerful, and get behind people who have the infrastructure and the framework to guide you in that way, and to gather us all together in the way that we need to lead it. So that's my answer to, should you have your own protests.
That's right. And organizations are being so clear right now about how we can plug in. So we can follow organizations like the Adala Justice Project on Instagram and they are sending out really clear action items and really clear information about mobilizations. And again, Jewish Voice for Peace can show you about Jewish mobilizations across the country. So the U.S. campaign, there's so many organizations that are already doing this work. So we get to plug in, and it's really important that we turn out and that we be visible whoever we
Yeah.
are. We use it, like you said,
Oh,
we use our
Derica,
platform.
hey, I got to hear her speak last night on Zoom. It was really awesome. She said we should gather people in small groups and like read together. Again, I was able to like really be blessed to be in a small room with people last night who were able to answer all of my questions and teach me anything that I felt like I was unsure of, and just hold space for like my passion and my feeling about it, and guide me in a way that I needed. So I think that that's important to like she said, educate yourself. There's so many movies, there's so many books, there's so many resources. We have no excuse for any of us to not know what's going on, because we literally live in an Instagram world and a phone world where you can literally just click and watch a less than 2 minute video and figure out what's going on. So she said house meetings, do Zoom calls, do other things besides jumping to plan a protest. And if you are ready to use your body and ready to be outside and ready to do that, these protests are happening. They are existing. They've been happening. People have been protesting for Palestine. And I think that a bunch of these pages we've been talking about have been posting like lists. Yeah, have been posting these lists of like each city, and
Very much so.
I'm sure it's a quick Google search to figure out what organizations exist in your city. So yeah, I think I'm trying to scroll up. Like they keep skipping on me.
Mm-hmm.
What do I suggest? Uh, being attacked? If we're being attacked online, I will just say that that is still a privilege compared to how people are being murdered in real life. And there's really no other uh, way that I can say it. Like us being shadow banned, or in the comments with Israeli flags, or you couldn't even come to Palestine because you're queer. Like, block it out. I want to say it will never in a million years, and I can't believe that like it even has to be said at times, but like it will never in a million years be compared to what's actually happening that we're actually watching.
That's right. That's right. And what Palestinians around the world, around the Palestinian diaspora
Right.
face when they literally just speak about their identities and their histories and the literal facts of their family are constantly being subjected to horrible harassment. And so I think for all of us who are non-Palestinian,
Right.
it's time for us to be
Right.
brave, and it's time for us to be the braver version of ourselves, and it's time
Right.
to do what we need to do and do what we can do to use the agency that's in our hands.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
contagious. Like what you're doing, it's contagious in a good way, you know. So like, let's be contagious in a good way, and let's
Yeah.
be the versions of ourselves that we're trying
This
to be.
says, how do we convince other celebrities and influencers to speak up? I wish that I had an answer for you. I am really into shame. I'm really into the shame movement of being like, how do you sleep at night and what's wrong with you? I think shame is a very powerful tool, and I think that's where we're at with it, is to tell people what the fuck is wrong with you sincerely. And that's just how I speak. That is just who I am. That is just how I get down. Um, but even more than that, I hope they feel incredibly stupid when everyone else is speaking. Everyone else that doesn't have influence, and everyone else that is a not under a microscope or not highly visible person. Stop streaming their music. Blow their comments up. That's what my friend Florcy, hi Florcy, said in the comments is they can't contribute. We stop contributing. And I would hope, I would hope that everyone takes a chance to get educated and everyone decides to speak. And if that's not the case, then they will have to face themselves in years to come when they look back. Um, there are plenty of better people we can look
That's
to follow in these movements anyways, but I don't know what to tell you about that. My hope is like,
absolutely right.
I live in Hollywood, I work here, I be around these people, I'm literally feeling like I'm in a fucking mind warp. Like, how are you guys carrying around with your day? How are you at a photo shoot right now? Like, how are we in the studio? Like, what is going on? We're talking about Grammys, and we're like, there's Grammy consideration posts going up, and like, it's not making any sense to me either. I'm having a hard time eating. I'm having a hard time, like, guilty with my child. Like, I'm having a hard time just like functioning throughout the day. You shouldn't feel crazy for that. You should feel like that. You should feel that upset. There's no way that we should be watching what's going on and not feeling completely upside down. Um, Again, I'm gonna do the thing where I talk too much and I forget that I'm on live and not a FaceTime.
No, I mean, I'm just deep yes to everything you're saying. Like deep yes to everything you're saying.
Yeah.
And like we have to stop business as usual. We cannot allow
Right.
like business as usual is what's
Right.
allowing this situation to go on in our names with our tax dollars. So our job, wherever we are, with whatever platform and relationships we have,
Yeah.
is to disrupt business as usual and to
Yeah.
say no, we will not be used as part of this war machine.
Woo! Okay, I want to keep reframing this, y'all, that I've never done this. This is not what I typically do.
And you did you're doing. I mean, like, I know what the hell do I know, but I'm just saying, like, when do people do this? Like what you're doing, and you're saying, I like, place to not know and to learn, but to be courageous with your values. I like, you are modeling for us what we need to be doing. Like, you are modeling that, like, that courage and that bravery. And so none of us have done anything before.
Yeah.
We're doing it. We're
I
doing it
just,
now. We have
again,
to
want
do
to
it now.
reiterate to everyone, you don't have to be extremely academic to understand this. You don't have to be a public speaker to speak about it. You don't have to be a scholar. Again, I'm coming from a background of, I make music, I understand liberation. I'm from a city that has been a lead in liberation from long before time, before I could even conceptualize it. I was born in it, raised in it. It's not my first interaction of having to speak up with anything, and definitely not my first time speaking up for Palestine, but it's definitely my first time realizing that, you know, there is a more present action needed from all of us, and there's a more outward action needed from all of us, far beyond just making our one post that says free Palestine, and our post of our put it in our as our